We still have some time to burn. Where should we go next?
Traveler, there you are.
Oh, it's Ayaka! And Venti! That's an interesting combo.
I was just going to the festival venue to prepare the Ikebana lesson when I found a strange piece of paper on a flower stand. This bard just happened to be close by at the time. He informed me that you've also found similar papers recently. As such, we came together to find you two.
But the paper she found isn't quite the same as the ones we found before.
Here's the paper. Please, have a look.
Huh. All the poems we found before were roughly the same length. But this one is only 2 lines.
And even though there are only 2 short sentences, neither of them are next to the title or centered on the page. The position of the writing seems to indicate that there is other content written on this paper besides these 2 lines.
If we take the poem literally, it reads, "Dip this paper in water and see the truth naturally appear." Speaking of which, I have an ancient text at home, specializing in ancient and exotic stories. It mentions a special ink that will show itself when wet and disappear when it's dry. So, shall we give it a whirl? It just so happens that there's a pond nearby.
Wow, look! It's really working! More words have appeared on the paper! Let Paimon see what it says. The story says that after Sumizomi got the collection of poems from Akihito and put them into a stream of water, the plagiarized words in the poem became blurry. Huh? Why would that happen?
You see, Paimon, in the past, when printing was not yet well developed, handwritten text could easily become smudged in books when exposed to moisture. To ensure the text lasted longer, they'd either write using a special ink or coat the paper's surface with a waterproof coating once the writing was finished. Such special inks are time-consuming and laborious to produce, and the waterproof coating could also prove just as difficult. However, since Akihito's poetry collection was an important gift to be presented to the shogun, surely one of those 2 methods was used to protect it. But as for the plagiarized poems, not only would they lack Akihito's seal, but the words would also react differently when exposed to liquid.
Which means Akihito didn't plagiarize his work. He was set up!
Yes, it appears that this is the truth that Sumizome's story is trying to convey. Although the story is saddening, I've decided on the subjects to use for Akihito and Sumizome's portraits. Kazuha, Ayaka, would you be willing to be the models for my paintings?
I would be delighted.
Yes, as would I.
There you go. The next 2 portraits should be ready in no time.
Yes. And now that all 4 stories have all been collected, the story of the 5 Kasen is now fully completed.
Long ago, Inazuma had 5 legendary poets. People bestowed upon them the title of the 5 Kasen.
One year, the poet Suiko made his way to Tenshukaku and presented the Kasen's work for the shogun's perusal. But a page from the works of Aoi no Okina had been torn out, and Suiko was questioned regarding the matter. Suiko pleaded guilty. He admitted to drinking at the tavern the night before, and vaguely recalled a mysterious figure approaching while he was intoxicated.
That figure was none other than Aoi no Okina himself. This turn of events had begun with an unnamed individual, under whose coercion Aoi no Okina was forced to take drastic measures to retrieve a page of poetry. He knew nothing of this individual's true intentions. All he knew was that the poem had to do with an old acquaintance, Akahito.
Akahito had once belonged to the 5 Kasen. Each poem he composed, he marked with a scarlet red seal, hence the Aka in his name. Such a distinguished writer was he, and yet one of the poems he had submitted the previous year was found to be plagiarized. Akahito was exiled for his crimes, and only 4 of the 5 Kasen remained.
Sumizome went over Akihito's poems and noticed that the plagiarized poem lacked his seal. She immersed his poetry in a stream nearby, and only on the plagiarized poem did the ink run. Aoi no Okina passed by and witnessed Sumizome's doing, which he then recorded in a poem. Thus transpired the events of Suiko's poetry submission, and this is where the story comes to an end.
All the world holds dear is but a backdrop of...
Yeah. Ever since we completed the story of the 5 Kasen, there's still one thing Paimon hasn't been able to figure out. One of the 5 Kasen is called Kuranushi, right? It's just that... how could the story of the 5 Kasen finish without him appearing at all?
Oh! Have you really not noticed?
Huh? Not noticed what? This is no time to be playing games, Tone-Deaf Bard!
What he means is that the story of Kuronushi was already embedded within the 4 poems.
Huh? Really?
That's right. The key lies in the poem that Aoi no Okina wrote after seeing Sumizome rinsing the poetry collection. An average person could never understand the scene of a young girl washing Akahito's poetry collection in a stream. Even Aoi no Okina couldn't figure out the meaning behind Sumizome's actions. He was simply reminiscing and thinking about his old acquaintances. However, for the perpetrator who framed Akahito, it was completely obvious. He was worried that if this poem was seen by the Shogun, then the Shogun could discover the truth behind the plagiarism incident. If that happened, then he'd be finished. So, in desperation, he threatened Aoi no Okina to make him tear out this poem.
Which means the one who threatened Aoi no Okina is the same person that framed Akahito. What? Kuranushi?
That's right. Though there are only 4 poems, they still managed to tell the complete story of all 5 Kasen. Since the Shogun mentioned in the poems is certainly not the one of the 5 Kasen, the only character left is the mysterious one with an unknown identity.
Oh, okay. Paimon is finally starting to get it now.
However, this also brings something else to mind. The story of the 5 Kasen has more or less reflected everything that's been happening around us lately. Which begs the question, is there a Kuronushi in our world as well?
A Kuranushi? In our world?
Speaking of which, I wonder if our dear Kazuha has come up with anything.
Oh, right! Kazuha! He's been pretty quiet this whole time. Let's ask him. Hey, Kazuha! Are you okay? You've been standing in front of this blank canvas for a while, and you don't look so good.
Apologies for making a wild assumption, but has the story of the 5 Kasen reminded you of anything?
Yes. A few things did come to mind, actually. However, they were nothing more than some past incidents regarding my family. I don't mind sharing the stories, but I'd prefer not to bring you any more trouble.
Hey, we're all friends here, Kazuha. You can always tell us whatever's on your mind.
Kaidehara, please forgive my assumption, but perhaps you were thinking of the Raiden Gokuden?
The Raiden Gokuden? What's that?
It appears that Miss Kamisato and I were thinking of the same thing. But it also has much to do with the Yashiro Commission. It would be improper to speak of it here without the consent of Miss Kamisato.
It's fine. Those of us here are all trustworthy, so there isn't any harm in it. However, this matter is somewhat complicated and may be difficult to explain. Let me start with the Raiden Gokuden. As you all know, the Yashiro Commission's primary purpose is managing ceremonial and cultural affairs, and Inazuma's art of forging swords is a very important part of our culture. The Raiden Gokuden were once the top 5 schools of the forging art in Inazuma. Although these families were swordsmiths by craft, they also held many important positions in the Yashiro Commission. Unfortunately, of the 5, only the Amenoma art still maintains its artisan lineage. The descendants of the Ishin art are also still alive, but the craft has been lost to time. The descendants of the Ishin art are none other than the Kaidehara family.
Whoa! We knew Kazuha came from a noble family, but we had no idea about his connection to the Yashiro Commission and sword making.
Yes, but that's all part of the past now. The Ishin art was lost with my great-grandfather's generation. My grandfather was dissatisfied with my great-grandfather's lack of effort. When he was young, my grandfather traveled all over Tevat to find a way to revive the family business. But it was to no avail. And in my generation, our last remaining family property was lost as well.
I heard my elder brother mention that the decline of the Raiden Gokuden happened very rapidly. In the span of a few decades, 3 of the families suffered various misfortunes and disappeared completely. Later, there was speculation that all of these misfortunes stemmed from some background machinations, meaning that someone wanted to wipe out the Raiden Gokuden. However, since not every family of the Raiden Gokuden came to ruin, such explanations were treated as nothing more than a conspiracy theory.
Indeed. I've also believed such ideas were just theories and rumors. However, I know that a major incident happened to my great-grandfather when he was young. Not only did it affect the Kaedehara clan, but it nearly jeopardized the Kamisato clan's position in the Yashiro Commission as well. After reading the story of the 5 Kasen, I can't help but feel like it's pointing me toward the truth behind that incident.
What exactly happened to your great-grandfather, Kazuha?
I still can't say. I need to speak with someone to verify the details. Let's meet here again at noon tomorrow. I will tell you everything I know then.